They took their attention and our resources away from that threat and once again pointed it at our fellow Americans.
Tulsi Gabbard is now the head or the director of national intelligence, and she sat down with Lara Trump on her new Fox show, and they talked about what the real threats to America are.
Biden once said that white supremacy was the single greatest terrorist threat to our homeland. What do you feel is the greatest threat to the American people's safety?
We look at the last 4 years of open borders, where we had tens of millions of people come across our borders, many of whom we don't know who they are or what their intentions are. And very specifically, the threat of radical Islamist terrorism here within our country is higher than it's ever been before, not only because of President Biden's open borders, but because of his and his administration's fear of being called Islamophobes. They took their attention and our resources away from that threat and once again pointed it at our fellow Americans.
Megyn, it's sort of the same thing with Bobby, just like hearing some simple truth that we need to hear. But I know you know Tulsi a little bit. Like, she's like the most lovely, decent human being on earth. And the fact that she got this job now, I think is going to be like, I think it's going to be the great surprise of the administration how much good stuff she's going to do. And the fact that she just told the truth there. We're so used to hearing the other version of this, and she just told the truth.
Yes, I have a lot of thoughts on that. So we're talking about Bobby, we're talking about Trump, we're talking about Tulsi. In a way, we're talking about you and me. That's 5, all of whom used to be Democrats and now no longer are.
Yep.
Right. Like all of us, when I was younger, I was a Democrat. But all of us crossed over. And why? Because the left is insane. Because they went so crazy, we wanted nothing to do with them. It was like 15-foot pole. That's not long enough. More distance, please, more. And in Tulsi's case, it was the most vicious chasing out of the party. I mean, in Bobby's too. In recent memory, though, I mean, they were accusing her of being treasonous, of being like a spy for Bashar al-Assad or Vladimir Putin. I mean, sick. And that came right from Hillary Clinton's camp. I mean, like, she was not above any of that nonsense. And why? Why? What was Tulsi's original sin? She spoke up about the cheating the DNC did to make sure Hillary won in the 2016 nomination contest and Bernie didn't. And that turncoat, Bernie Sanders, didn't even vote for her. I mean, this party is vicious and has absolutely no loyalty. So that's one thing. Secondly, yes, of course, it's radical Islamic terrorists. That's obvious. And, you know, it's the lunatic left that wants to say it's just white men. It's just white men are the ones who we really have to worry about. But that reminded me of the AP controversy, which is in the news now, and how President Trump has said, you know what, AP, you can keep your seat in the White House briefing room, but you're not getting a pass into the Oval or onto Air Force One. And one of the many, many things that the AP has done in recent years is to ban the use of that term. They don't say Islamist and they don't say terrorist when they're talking about Islamic radicals. They'll say it when they're talking about what happened on the Capitol on January 6th, but they will not say it when they're talking about radical Islamists. They've erased those words from their style book, which is the gold standard. It's what all journalistic outlets are told to use. It's a propaganda machine. So it's sort of an act of courage for her to come out and just say what's real and use the proper terms. By the way, not for nothing, but other terms that the AP got rid of were riots. You can only say protests. That came into effect right after George Floyd, unless you're talking about January 6th, in which case you can say riots and or insurrection, both totally fine, but not about George Floyd. And if you're talking about riots, I mean protests during and after George Floyd, you also have to be sure to point out the underlying grievance that the looters and criminals are looting and committing crimes over. That's AP policy. So you've got this, one of, if not the most respected journalistic outlet in America that won't say what she just said. And is it any wonder there was the blowback there was to somebody like Tulsi stepping into that role?